Hi, welcome. I'm Jessie Walters with Charles Rutenberg. I'm here today to talk to you guys about as-is contracts and what they mean and basically what you're signing, and hopefully it gets, help you guys out and stuff. I have an as-is contract in front of me, and I'm going to kind of go through it with you guys. As you guys know, I'm not an attorney, but I'm just going to give you some advice as just a realtor being in the business for 16 years, how to check, make sure when you're doing an as-is contract in the state of Florida, to make sure that you're actually not missing anything as a consumer. You're going over it with your realtor. Hopefully I'm your realtor, so I'm really explaining it to you. But if you're dealing with someone else, you want to just make sure you have some key questions answered. You might want to get a piece of paper or take some notes, and we're going to just go over it. And I'm going to put my thinkers on so I can see you guys, so I look smarter when I explain it to you. So first, we're going to throw up the as-is contract. And you guys are going to say, as is, what does that mean? Well, I want to say the old days, which was a couple years ago, they sell a house as is, and it would mean no repairs. And at that time when we did as is contracts a lot, the seller might have been in debt, so there was no repairs, or with the current market, obviously we're still not doing repairs, but a lot of people are selling them as is, which means that they're not intending to do repairs. But I guess 2 or 3 years ago, we had people we had short sales, we had more bank foreclosures, we had a lot of things going on where we could actually say as is, and it actually meant that we're not going to do any repairs at all on that contract. So I circled it. You can see that little arrow going there, and that's what as is meant. Now, if you're under contract and you find repairs, you can still ask for them. A lot of sellers who lived in the home want to see the buyers get a nice place and not have to do a bunch of repairs. So they'll give you a little allowance, or they might do the repairs for you. Right now, a lot of sellers are not doing repairs. So this is the most popular form. If you have a contract over, if your house is over $1 million, you're probably, you might see the as-is, but you're probably going to see the different residential contract. But today we're going to just talk about the as-is contract. So your house is, this one right here is $333,000, and it was in Weeki Wachee. So the first thing, when you go up to Part 1D, you're going to want to make sure that part has your actual appliances in there. So this one's appliances per the MLS, because we all went over it, and it's in black and white, and it says refrigerator, stove. You can write those out there too. If it has a pool and it doesn't say pool equipment, you want to write that on there. Or if there's any window treatments, because a lot of times it's the attached things that are going to stay with the house. But as far as it goes, the window treatments, if there's blinds and then there's window treatments on top, I always write out window treatments. Make sure that they're staying. Appliances like your refrigerator, your stove. A lot of people put hot water tanks on there too, water softeners, pool equipment. Actual, when they say pool equipment, they mean like the scrubbers and stuff. If there's an actual pool cleaner in there, you want to write that on that line. Make sure it's all covered. If they said, well, we're gonna, this is my mom's Tiffany light. We want that to come with us. That's going to be the next line. So the following items are going to be excluded from the purchase. So in other words, the seller has this item in the home, and it's going to be excluded from the actual purchase, like a light or something attached to the home that you would think that would stay. So they'll write that in on the line. Recently, I had someone actually with a Tiffany chandelier, and they did not, we excluded that from the purchase. So that said Tiffany chandelier located in dining room. If you start putting stuff like refrigerator, stove, washer, dryer, stuff like that, it could affect the appraisal, but a lot of times in this market right now, if someone wants to take their refrigerator with them, we're trying to appease the sellers right now. So it may say that's excluded from the actual purchase price and stuff. So when I get to the next line, we'll get the purchase price amount. Now, the purchase price amount, we always ask the actual buyers to put an initial deposit, usually 1% to 2%. So if your agent asks for $3,333 on this one to be put into an escrow, and you want to look like you're more basically in with the deposit, such as like when you go, if you're a new home buyer, when you put a deposit for your rental, it's the same type of it's the same type of thing. You're going to be similar to renting a place. But this is going to be 1 to 2%. So we put 5,000. We could have put 6,000. But we put 5,000 deposit to make it look like we were, very. This is the buyer side I was representing, so we wanted to make it look like we were strong buyers. 5,000 down, not 1,000, not 500, not zero. Even if you're doing a VA loan, right now in this market is so competitive, you want to put something in there, even though you're going to get that money back at the end of it. So then next time we'll say the title company. Of course, you guys know Nightberry Title Services is our sponsor, and we love them. Special thanks to them for always sponsoring us and doing such a great job when they do the title work for us. On this one, of course, you saw Title USA was the one that was representing the actual seller. So when you ask what a escrow is, that's the amount, like we said, we're going to secure the house with, we're going to show them. Now, a title company is basically a non-biased party that's going to hold that escrow. So they're not on your side and they're not on the buyer side. Not that it's a fight, but they're not representing either one of you guys. They're non-biased, holding that deposit to secure the house. And basically, that's going to be a big part of your closing. So if you had to bring 10%, or on this one, you can see they have to bring. This one was their mortgage is going to be $180,000, and they're going to bring $182,000 to the table. And of course, that $5,000 is took out of that money that they're bringing to the table. So they're not going to get the $5,000 back, but they are in a way, because it's less money they have to bring to close out this house. So they're just holding it for them. So if your closing costs are $6,000, this one's a really great buyer. But say your closing costs are $6,000 and you put a $2,000 deposit down. Now you only have to bring $4,000 because they're holding that money for you. So it's not necessarily like you don't get it back because you don't have to bring less in, if that makes sense. So on this one, we had time for acceptance, and we went over the time for acceptance. So when you go over, you just cross through it. You're going to initial, and then you're going to put that change on there. So you can see on the left, we initialed that. And then the closing date. Now, usually the closing date, if you have a mortgage, is 30 days from the actual, from that effective, or from the actual date this contract is signed. So those are key dates as far as a buyer. You're going to want to know, okay, first, where am I closing at? I'm going to be closing on this one at Title USA in Crystal River. And then secondly, you're going to want to know what's the date that I need to close by, and then how much do I need to bring to the table. So these things on the front of this contract are going to be very important to you, and you might be excited and you might not really be taking it in, but this is where you're going to find this information on the front page of the actual contract. So now when we go through and we're buying this home and stuff, a lot of times people will pull up the tax records, and it'll say, and they'll get kind of a little bit worried, because like in this home, say they pulled up and they're buying it for $333,000. They're going to look at the tax assessed in their county and see that it says $298, and so they're like, oh my gosh, am I getting ripped off, or are they taking advantage of me? Well, the tax assessed is always going to be lower than the actual market value right now. There was a time, when we had the crash and stuff, where it was the market value and the assessed value were pretty close together. But right now, the assessed or the tax values on the county, those are going to be lower than the prices. If you buy something at assessed value right now, off the top of my head, I would say that you're getting a pretty good deal. So this one, say it said $298, you're paying $333. That sounds about right. So don't worry on that. And then when you get when you actually get to your closing time, on that date, you're gonna do what they call a final walkthrough. And these are all key things to remember just on this front page of this page 1 of this contract. Of course, it's like 12 pages long, but you're going to want to do a final walkthrough. Is a final walkthrough mandatory? No, it's not mandatory, but it's something that I always say is, let's make sure the house is still there. And it's kind of like a joke, but in a way it's serious. It's highly recommended to do a walkthrough. A lot of times if my clients don't want to do a walkthrough or don't have time, I'll go just walk through the house myself, just make sure that there's been no damages, no break-ins, no flooding, no, fires, anything like that. Because once you purchase that home, it's your home, and it gets into a kind of a heated situation if there was any damages, and you'll think to yourself, I should have done a walkthrough. So I think that's the escrows. Okay, so then on the second page, of course, they have the extensions of closing dates, all those different things that you could actually, that you could actually do. If you get as far as a seller, if you get down to assignability, if you get to assignability and that box is checked that they may assign this contract, most likely you have a investor. A lot of those Open Door, or I hate to mention the names, I shouldn't have done that, but a lot of let's see, actually not Open Door. Let me think. Lightning. Well, maybe I won't say names. Let's just say that assignment contracts are, you're getting a cash purchaser on your home, and they're going to try to flip that home before they actually even own your home. So if that box is checked, may assign. Sometimes people will do it for family members, like grandma wants to buy it, but it might be sister, but it might be brother. So that may be checked. But you want to double check who's purchasing your home, and definitely get proof of funds, even if a investment company, because what they'll do is they'll sell this contract before it won't even go into their actual hands. So I'll take this, I'll check may assign, and I'll keep your contract, and then I'll find this buyer over here that wants to buy it, and then I'll just say, okay, you're selling it, and then you checked this one box, and it changed everything. So of course, like I said, I'm not an attorney, but if we've done this so many times, so if you guys need any help, just give me a call, or and I can make sure you're not being taken advantage of. A lot of times, or most of the time, it'll say may not assign this contract. So that's a normal sale. So if you don't know what assignability means, of course you can Google it. You can call your realtor. You can call an attorney and get legal advice. But may not assign is the best thing, because basically your buyer is going to go all the way through. That buyer whose name's on there is the one purchasing it. They're not going to assign it or basically transfer this contract to somebody else. So when we get to financing, that's key. We're always like, what kind of financing is it? Of course, if that first box is checked, we know we got a good cash buyer, and then the chances of you getting the house right now is higher than anyone else because you've got that box checked. Now, in this one, it was an FHA buyer, but the FHA buyer had a lot of money down. So, obviously won out this one because of that. And it's definitely a strong purchaser. Now, when you get down to under financing, there's a 30-year option, and if you don't fill in the box, it's going to just assume you're getting a 30-year mortgage. If you don't fill out the box, I usually check, like it says FHA. It's a fixed loan amount, and then 30-year mortgage. Depending on your age of my customers, it's up to you on your 30-year. I mean, there's no you can be 100 years old and get a 30-year mortgage, but if you're trying to retire and pay off your home and you're 60, you may want to get a 15-year mortgage if that's something. But there's no what's the word? There's no, I guess. Basically, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can always get a 30-year mortgage. I can walk in at 100 years old, and they cannot turn me down for a 30-year mortgage. But if you're trying to retire and you're in your 60s, I would say get a 15-year mortgage, so you just pay it off and you don't have any more stress. Or and of course, if you're 20 years old and you want to get a 15-year mortgage too, that's not that much more. You'd be surprised how. Or you can get a 30-year mortgage and throw some extra money on it and try to get that thing paid down. But so that's most mortgages are 30 years, and like it says, if it's left empty, that blank is just going to assume you're doing a 30-year mortgage. So on these, you're going to sign each page, obviously, and so when you go to the third page of the contract, it has closing costs, different things like that. Now, it's standard in Florida for the seller to provide you with a clear title, and of course that's where we with Knight Berry Title Services, that's what they provide for us, but the seller is going to pay for that, and it goes through all the costs to be paid by the actual seller, which is going to be your owner's policy, the stamps, taxes on the deed, the lien search, And then if there's any HOA, estoppel fees, recording fees, or if you have attorney's costs that you actually didn't go through a title company, you're going to have that part. And of course, on the title company too, you're going to have a fee there. What's an estoppel? An estoppel is when you have an HOA. Now you have to be mentally prepared for this, because if you have an HOA and you pay your HOA fees every month, that's great. They're still going to charge you an estoppel, which can be from $150 to, I've seen them as high as $500. So estoppel, basically, that word stop in there means that you're paid up to date. They're going to show the last, the actual last payment, kind of freezes your HOA dues, and it's going to transfer it to the next person by showing them that you're paid in full. Now that new person is going to have to probably fill out an application for the HOA, so it's not an actual transfer, but what it does is it stops and tells them the amount that you're owed to make sure that you're paying full, to make sure there's no liens or anything on this property. So they're going to charge you an estoppel. Now, if you have two HOAs, be mentally prepared, you're going to have two estoppels. So if you're paying one HOA to the main master, and then one HOA to the other, the normal HOA, you're going to have two estoppels. They could be $150 each, could be $300 each, they could be $500 each. But those estoppels, those fees add up. That's something that sometimes as realtors, you do your closing costs and stuff, and then you forget kind of, I forgot you have two HOAs, so it adds up. So if you see that on there, it's not the realtor's fault. It's not the title company's fault. It's kind of your fault for having two HOAs. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's the HOA's fault, for basically getting the estoppels. They have to go through attorneys to get those. And of course, that's not free. The attorney letter to state that you don't owe anything. And that's what the title company uses to actually show that you have no liens or encumbrances on the property. So that's kind of interesting. Now, what is paid by the buyer? Oh, and of course, commission is paid by the seller too, but what is paid by the buyer? So you're going to have the recording fees on there again, and then you're going to also have your new mortgage. You're going to have to pay for the recording on your new mortgage. You're going to have your survey. You're going to have your lender's title policy, your HOA transfer fee. That's what we were talking about. Municipal lien search, loan expenses, appraisal fees, buyer inspections, which we usually pay those prior, buyer's attorney's fees or title company fees, all property related insurance, owner's policy premium. Now, some of these are not, it's not 100% all the time. Sometimes you pay in advance your appraisal fee. Most lenders like to get the appraisal fee paid in advance on a credit card. So that sometimes that's not on there, but your loan expenses are going to be on there. And of course they send those to you ahead of time too. You're going to see your loan expenses about 10 times. And then when you go and sign your mortgage, you're going to see that about 10 times too. You're going to have to sign on that. But all those things are standard costs to be paid by the buyer. And when we talk about making a contract up, for a seller to look great, you're the buyer, and you can pay their closing costs if you want. It's going to cost you, a couple $1,000, and you can leave their commission to them. But to get your bid up higher, you can say, well, I'll pay all sellers' closing costs. It's kind of what people are doing these days, kind of creative contracts. So your title evidence, you're going to go ahead and that's going to be standard. And then on the last one, you're going to check seller shall designate that's the part there where you can, on the bottom, where you can actually say, well, you know what, I'll get my own closing agent and I'll pay for it all. Well, if you check that box, of course, it's going to cost you more, but you just might win the bid because the standard is, I would say, 99% of agents are going to put seller's going to pay closing costs and owner's policy for buyer. That's going to be checked. So keep that in mind when you're putting together that great offer for that. If you haven't already done it and you're not reviewing your contract with me right now. So now on page 4, you got the home warranty. A lot of times, people want the home warranty. Now, if you're a buyer and you're trying to put an offer together, I don't suggest you ask seller for home warranty right now. If you want to purchase it, best time to do it is on your contract so the title company knows, because if you don't purchase that right at closing, a lot of times that's problematic. You're going to want to actually purchase that home warranty and put that on there. So, and then you can put up to an amount too. And if you change your mind as a buyer and you decide, I don't want to purchase that home warranty anymore, you can also, you can also take that off too. But if you request the seller to pay for that, you're going to make sure that you put the amount in there. And the same with you. If you don't want to go over 500, you don't have to go over whatever the amount, or 300, depending. That's based on square foot, pools, all the different things that could add up. But definitely ask your agent about home warranties. They're going to cover your appliances, your AC, your water heater, your softener. They're going to cover stuff like that. If your air condition breaks, most home warranties are you're going to get a service person who's going to come out, and you may still have to pay an actual fees and stuff like that. So they'll say, oh, you have a home warranty, you get a discount. Or some will say you have a home warranty, you get a discount on parts, stuff like that. So it doesn't mean that just because you pay $500 for a home warranty, doesn't mean that you actually get free appliances and it pays for it 100%. So keep that in mind. You most of the time, most of the ones I've seen have been like a discount. So anyway, now the next part on this, it'll say special assessments. What's a special assessment? So if you have your road paved, and you've been paying it on your tax bill, you haven't really noticed because your tax bill is in escrow, but your road looks all good, and since you've lived there that you've had your the actual paving done out throughout the neighborhood, that's a special assessment. So a lot of times you'll have the seller pay that in full prior to closing. And of course, in this market, if there's been a special assessment, and you don't mind the extra $200 or $300 on your tax bill, then you'll check the other box that says that you're going to pay the installments. You're going to basically take over the installments. So the second one is the seller paying the installments in full. So if they owe $2,000 on a paving assessment, and that lien is going to come up with the title company, that's going to be included in the seller's closing costs. If your seller has been paying installments, and you want to make your contract look more attractive, you're going to check the first box, which is going to say you're going to just basically take over those seller assessment costs. So then you got disclosures, and we all know about, well, we don't all know about it, but radon gas, permits, mold, flood zone. And these things right here, the flood zone, of course, if you have an elevation certificate, that might bring your flood insurance down. But all these things right here, permitting, disclosure, stuff like that, the seller should disclose in the seller's property disclosure. If they've never lived in the home, they might not have knowledge of, what permits, what's open, what was done prior, if it's a rental. But you might have a additional bathroom and there's no permit for it. It doesn't show up on the title. So those things they need to disclose. Doesn't mean that you can't sell your house if you've took your garage and you've enclosed it. It just means that you need to disclose that information. And it also means that when they do the appraisals and stuff, that you might not get full value because it's going to be appraised as a garage. And then if you've done some crazy stuff in there, they might want you to take it out as far as you didn't do it to code, stuff like that. So it can be problematic. Again, on the permits, but they ask you to obviously be, honest. You have to be honest on that. And so the flood zone, a lot of new agents don't really understand which areas are flood zones or how to show, which area is a flood zone. And if they don't tell you and you're purchasing this home, you're going to want to definitely check that and make sure, because there's going to be a flood insurance policy that's going to be due unless you're paying cash. So in other words, your lender is not going to lend $333,000 on a home that's in a flood zone without insuring that home, because God forbid a flood goes through there. They want to make sure they get their money back and they're protected. So if you're in a flood zone, your agent forgets to tell you, or the seller forgets to disclose it's a flood zone, you may want to check yourself. A lot of properties in Pasco, Hernando, and Pinellas on the west side of US Highway 19 are a flood zone. There's some areas throughout Hillsborough basically, if you see water from your property, most likely you're in a flood zone. But it's not that easy. You need to get on your property appraiser, or ask the actual seller what if they're in a flood zone. They should know, unless their property is paid for in cash, because a lot of the counties had gone through in the last couple of years and actually changed some of the properties that were not in flood zones to flood zones. So FEMA, they work together, and they basically change the flood maps and stuff. So they may not have knowledge of it. So just double check that you're not in a flood zone, because you will be paying flood insurance if you're purchasing a home in a flood, area. So on the next page, on page 5, you have basically all the disclosures, lead-based paint, stuff like that. So if you have lead-based paint, they're gonna have you fill out another form. It means the house was built before 1978, and that used to be, again, problematic with little kids eating. I don't know how they were eating paint off the walls, but I guess in 1978 we're more bored, where we were where the kids are possibly sorry, off track. It went off track. And then you got the homeowners association disclosure, which could possibly be a part of this or most likely be a part of this contract too. If you have a homeowners association, you will be signing. They will be telling you how much the monthly fees are going to be, or the yearly fees. And then you have your property tax disclosure. Again, you should not rely on the property tax disclosure. You should check it yourself and know that it's going to be reassessed, especially if you're purchasing a home that was $200,000 and now it's worth $400,000. Taxes are going to go up. We're not happy about it, but you should mentally be prepared for that too. And then you got your foreign investment. We had a whole show about FERPTA, to be careful. And I had one just the other day. Key signs that it may be a foreign seller is properties not homesteaded. It could be they're back and forth out of the United States. Remember, someone is going to pay that tax. As far as foreign nationals and stuff like that, nothing's for free. So if they made a profit on it, the IRS can attach a lien to your home. So make sure to definitely check on the disclosure that they basically are paying their taxes. If they are foreign national, the title company will hold that back. Or if they're not, and they just decide not to homestead the property, that's a possibility too. And then, of course, you're going to get your seller's disclosure. That's all going to be attached to this, but these are the things that they're going to disclose to you. Property maintenance. So they're going to ask you just to, if you're selling your home, keep your pool clean and keep the condition. It's as is, but keep the lawn cut, the trim, shrubbery, pool clean, the condition that they saw it in. I had a couple that I just went to, and the lady, she's very nice and stuff, but she was cleaning out everything during the home inspection. I usually ask everybody, wait till after the home inspection and then go in there and rip your house apart and put all it in boxes, load it all up as sellers, and mark your boxes and get everything out and get it organized. But as far as a buyer, they just saw your house like a little, it looked beautiful, looked like a show home. And then we go to the home inspection, and then everything is like an explosion because you're packing. If you can wait a couple days until that home inspection period's over, it's better for the buyers, because they walk in, they saw, like I said, the house all perfect, and now it's all ripped apart. So if you could do that for your buyers, they'll really appreciate it. If you can't and you're in a hurry and you got to move quick, like say it's a cash sale and you only have 2 weeks, totally understandable. But the more organized you make your move look, the better. So, everyone's going to have boxes, and I always say it's just part of the process. Don't be embarrassed by your boxes. But if we're having the buyers come over and you're the seller, just have it look organized, as organized as you can. We had an estate sale on the one property, and so we had everything on top of every counter space in the whole place. So it did look like an estate sale when we went back through. So my buyer was a little bit scared, but it's just stuff that can be removed. So we had to go back to the pre-pictures of the listing to kind of assure the buyer, look, this is a beautiful property. It's going to look like it as soon as all this stuff's off all the counters and the floors and stuff. So when we get to inspection period, now that's a key thing right now. When I go over that all the time, when we're talking about putting a actual sale together, you want to make sure that the property inspection, that looks like a good day. In other words, this one was 10 days. If it's blank, you can see that it's going to be 15 days that the actual the property inspection can take place. So that used to be, a couple of years ago, 15 days. We just took our time. It was no big deal. Where now that's part of our negotiation when we're putting this together for buyers. We want that to look good. This one was 10 days, and we had put, I think we had put 15 because this was a couple of years ago, this actual contract. So when we changed it to 10, we initialed it. We said we'd speed it up for them, and we all worked together on that, and everybody was happy and stuff. But that is a negotiation tool. I don't put any more than 7 days on that now because, if you can get an inspector out there faster, I would say call ahead before you put it in there, but 5 days looks great. And sometimes people are just waiving inspections. But of course, it's better to be safe than sorry with home inspectors. We want to make sure that you know what you're getting into, even though the market right now, everybody's so motivated to get that house, and you feel like you won the lottery when you get it because you're so happy you won one. You want to just make sure they say for your protection, get a home inspection. So that's basically it. It not only protects you, like I said, it lets you know how much roof life do I have? How's the air condition look? How's the maintenance? What do I need to do? And it kind of gives you a honey-do list, even if the actual seller is not going to help you put together a, like a list of repairs and help you out. It'll let you know what you're getting into. And also, on that home inspection, you if you're getting insurance, you're going to have to at least get a 4.2. So there's that. So you're definitely going to have someone come out there and do an inspection, whether it's the full home inspection or just like your roof inspection and your electrical panels, stuff like that, to actually obtain the insurance on the home. And we went through about walkthroughs. I just, like I said, had a walkthrough where the back room was flooded. We held some money in escrow for the actual purchaser. She still went through with the contract because, as you know, there's shortage. There's no houses for sale, so she still wanted a house to move to. But the seller appeased the buyer by putting some money in escrow for that flooding of the back room to pay for not only the hose bib that leaked outside, but also the new flooring, the dehumidifier, stuff like that. So we want to make sure that you do the walkthrough just in case there is a problem. Can it be worked through? Sure. But, if you get there and there's problems, like big problems or squatters or just whatever is going on, that could be a problem. And then you have seller acceptance to close out permits. As we were saying, some people didn't pull permits on it, but if you're say you got a garage door and the county didn't come out and check it, you assume the garage door people actually did. I have a garage door and the permit is open on my house. As I was going through just to kind of look and stuff, and my garage door guy called him now. And now it's been like 2 years later, my permit's still open. And so if I was to ever sell my house, I know that that's going to be an issue. So I have to work with the buyers at that point to basically close out that permit. So by signing this one, the seller is agreeing to that. So if he forgot about something, he's going to have to get with the county, get with the person who did it. I had one with an air conditioner, and they did help and they did close it out and stuff. So that totally is, it's a pain in the neck, but it is something that can be worked out. So don't worry if you do end up having a permit open. It is irritating at the time when you find out, but everything is fixable on that. So again, if you need help with some of these things, your title company, Nightberry, can help you, or you can call me. I can, advise you how to do that. So on the page, what page am I on? Page 6. You got your escrow agent, which we kind of went over. And like I was saying, I use Nightberry Title Services. If you're trying to buy or sell, they're our sponsor, and they're great as far as escrow agents and just dealing with them and stuff. And you're going to go through number 14, professional advice. This is all my suggestion. I'm not an attorney, but I wanted to just share what you guys need to go through as far as looking for key things on your contract. So on there it says professional advice. You may want to contact, an attorney, And as far as the base square footage on the home, it covers that in that paragraph too. Base square footage on a home. I just had one the other day. We were at Tarpon Woods. We were in Palm Harbor, Eastlake, and some of the places have the back room enclosed. Some of the places don't have the back room. They're exactly cookie cutter homes. How can they have different square foot? Well, because the customers put air conditioned vents out and enclosed the outside patios to make it enclosed square footage. So that's how they came up with the different square footage of each one. My buyers on the, of course, I'm not going to release the addresses and their names and stuff. They're cash, so we don't have to have an appraiser go out. But that is an issue if one person enclosed it and the other one didn't. Whether it's which is base square footage, and if your customer is giving you a square footage and it does not match the county square footage, if the appraiser comes out and says, this is not done correctly, or this bedroom doesn't have a closet, this isn't considered base square foot, they'll still give you price for the square footage of your porch, but they're not going to give you base square foot price. That's something the appraiser has to decide. Most of the time they do work with you on that. So, but sometimes that does, like there was like 600 square foot difference. So when you have an appraiser come out, that can be problematic again. But if someone says, I think my house is bigger, I think you're wrong on the square footage, the best thing to do is literally take a tape measure and go outside the home on the base square foot and actually measure it. Just length times width equals your square foot. So it's not that hard to figure out. But if you go to the aerial or the building schematics on most property appraisers, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, and Hernando, you can see the schematics and see if that's included in the square foot. I had one the other day in River Crossing, and he said, I'm sure my house is bigger. And sometimes when you go into a house, it does feel bigger, but tape measures don't lie. So I said, well, let's get a tape measure, and we did, and the county was correct. So most of the time the county is correct on their square foot. If they did enclose something extra, you can say, well, what area did you enclose? And we can add that on. And then in the listing, the agent should put per seller square foot, not per county. So if you go on county, it says 1,800, and then your seller is selling 2,400. You need to find out what that difference is, and then go from there. So, and basically, there's a whole bunch of things that play in on that. But the best thing is to get a square foot. Get a square foot reading on it. Just tape measure. Length times width equals square foot. So if it's 20 by 50, you got 1,000 square foot. It's like it's kind of an easy thing to do, but sometimes when you're in there, my house is bigger, my house is better, and then like I said, the tape measure doesn't lie, so just get that tape measure out. So on page 7, we got dispute resolutions. So basically, if you have a problem with the purchaser and the contract falls through, the seller, the buyer contract falls through, or the buyer's the financing falls through, the seller will give the escrow back, as long as they are in their allotted time frame and they have a letter from the lender. But if you guys go into dispute, in 16 years, I've only had one, and no one could agree to, they ended up splitting the deposit. Actually, I had 2, which we didn't go into dispute on that one. They just split the deposit. What happened was the buyer decided she didn't want to move there anymore. She had about 6 kids. I think they felt bad as far as the seller, so they split the deposit with her. That was a dispute resolution, which was not took to in front of an attorney or anything like that. So, that's the best thing to do, obviously, to work it out. But as far as if your seller and your buyer, they cannot come to something, it'll go to an attorney, and then they'll decide your closing costs will be took out of the escrow. So, it's better to try to work with the person, and that's basically saying that you will by checking that. So you're going to go in, and again, you're going to go through all these different clauses and stuff. It is a legal document. Sometimes my customers will read these and they'll be like 2 or 3 hours later and they'll be totally confused and stuff, which it is confusing. And the best thing to do is if you're trying to purchase a home, just to make sure you're covered as far as the key things in there, and your realtor will definitely help you with that. So on page 8, we were talking about just different, you got your survey on there, lease information, liens, time, and then you're going to, let's see, you're going to go through all of these things here. Now the one, I think in Florida, when you get to G, that's something like as far as like a hurricane went through, stuff like that. Most of the time, if you're under contract, a lot of people worry like, what if the house isn't there to buy? That covers you. And then you got your survey, stuff like that. That's all in there. Lease information, if there's someone staying in there. So you have all those disclaimers, and then you've got on page 9, you got the closing location documents. You got your escrow closing, and then this is what we were talking about here as far as the closing procedure and stuff. You're going to be at the title company. You're gonna basically this one's gonna. If you break this down, they're handling all the closing for you, the escrow closing procedure, and then all the money is going to be sent to the escrow as far as the amount that you need to actually make this purchase. It's going to be sent to the closing too. And then you're going to think to yourself, what's a proration credit? Well, as a seller, a lot of times too, we were talking about HOA estoppels and how you don't expect that. A lot of times people don't expect proration credits either. They don't even know what a proration credit is. So taxes are in the rears, so you're going to pay. So for 2021, we haven't paid it yet. So if I sell your house, I have 2 coming on August 6th. So if you haven't, on August 6th, those sellers are going to have to pay January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, till August 6th. You're going to take your total tax bill and you're going to divide it by all those days. So you break down every single day in that month and then plus the 6 days, and you're going to divide it into that tax bill. And that's how much credit we're going to give that buyer. And why are we going to give that buyer that tax credit? Because when the end of the year comes, they're going to have to pay that tax bill. So literally you're paying them for the time that you were in your house. And a lot of people get really irritated about that, a lot of my sellers, but it's one of those things of, you would have to pay it. And they say, well, I'm paid up. I already paid my taxes for this year. Yeah, just because it was due, came November and you had till April to pay it, it was last year's bill. So you paid 2020, but you did not pay 2021, unfortunately. So you're going to give that buyer tax credit. A lot of buyers get all excited because they see that extra money in there. It's less money for you to come to the table with. So they're like, oh, I got all these credits. But you're going to have to pay that out in, November, December, January, depending on which month you choose to pay it. If you're escrowing with a bank, they're going to pay it most likely November, and they're going to have that money all ready to go. And they're going to ask you for the balance of that tax bill too. So that's going to be included in your closing costs. So the proration credit's a little bit confusing, but just remember that nothing's for free. So if we all have to pay the tax man. So you're gonna basically pay that up. So those proration credits, and then there's they're going to check also product appraisals. They're also going to check the water bills too. The water bills can stay on a home, not your electric bill, but your water bill can. So if you're if you're in a home and they say, well, we didn't have time, do you want us to check the water? Definitely have them check the water. If there's a problem, your title work will cover you, but you have to bring the bill in and stuff. A lot of times the water companies, depending on which county that you're in, will say that this has to be paid prior to you actually turning your water on. So, most of the ones I've seen haven't been a lot, but you want to make sure that the water bills are checked. But those proration credits, they can get a little pricey. And that CDD, depending on if that's in there too. So if you're in, let's see, Pasco, you're in Starkey Ranch has a CDD, Longleaf has a CDD. There's a bunch of different neighborhoods that have the CDD that's included in your taxes. You're going to be paying partial of that too, along with that tax proration credit. So if your taxes are, 6,000, and it's August, you're going to have to remember, well, basically, as even a number, 6,000 divided by 8, you're at 4,800 tax credit to your buyer. So you want to basically be mentally prepared for that. And if you're closing and you're waiting till November, you're going to pay your taxes out of that. So, like it was great in the beginning of the year because the tax credits were like hardly anything because everybody just paid. So if you're closing, ideally January, you had like $30, $100 tax credits and stuff. So just remember that if you're getting into higher end with higher CDD, that money that, the time that you lived in that house, you're going to be given that proration tax credit. And of course, on L there on page 9, you're going to have to give access to the property. So just because you're under contract now doesn't mean you're not going to let them back into the property. You're going to, they're going to want to do appraisals. They're going to do inspections. They're going to do a walkthrough. And you need to keep your water and your electric on for all those inspections, unless otherwise noted. And then your buyer, if you did note it, the buyer can turn it on. You can turn it on for a day. Most counties will let you turn it on for a day for inspections. But you're going to want to keep those on because even at the walkthrough, you're going to want to be able to turn the water on, make sure there's no leaks, stuff like that. So that's important. I had one and they did not keep the electric on electric or the water on. So we walked through in the dark. Of course, buyers are upset, but because there's a limited housing market right now, the sellers can kind of get away with a little bit more. But it does say right in your contract for accessibility, but it doesn't really say, please keep your water and your electric on. And it helps if you were a buyer. Think about like this: you have your electric and your water on. They have a connection fee. So if you keep it on for that buyer, you can actually save them like $150 connection fees, and the same depending on which county. They're all a little different, but they're pretty close. So say you're going to save them a couple $100 by keeping your electric and water on and working with that seller and saying, or that buyer, and saying, hey, when are you guys waiting for the day of closing to turn on the electric and the water? Most water municipalities won't turn it on until they have that closing statement. So your buyer's not trying to be awkward. They just can't turn it on without the closing statement signed by you. So if you give them a day or 2 days after closing for water, that's ideal. It's generous. It's probably not that much money. It's probably like 10 or 20 bucks depending on the square foot of the house and stuff. But it does save them like usually around between like average like 140 for water, 150 for electric. So you save them a couple $100. So that's nice to do that. And then of course, risk of loss. You guys are going to have to basically figure out what you're on the risk of loss. If you're going to let someone rebuild a home, blah, 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 which I don't think that's even right now. The building materials are so high and stuff. So I don't see someone having their house burnt down and saying, okay, just hold on or part of it and we'll redo it and then you can still buy it. And I don't see buyers or sellers sitting there and waiting for it to be rebuilt, but you never know. But it does go into stuff in here on that. And then there's 1031 exchange. So we had an actual show on 1031 exchanges. And basically that's taking an investment property and then turning it into another investment property. So that's in there too. So if you have someone, if they're going to rent your house out, they may be doing a 1031 exchange, and that covers them. And of course, if there's anything on here, they're going to have the writers as it goes on to are on here. They're going to have another piece of paper stating like what they're doing, most likely, or you're going to have something wrote in here. And again, it's going to go into FERPTA. It's going to go into all that stuff with disclosures. Of course, everyone loves a disclosure. So when we get to page 11, speaking of disclosures and addendums, on this one, on page 11, you'll see that the homeowners association is checked. Okay, so what does that mean to me? It means that there's another form that's going to come over with how much the homeowners association fee is. So basically, that gives you all that. On this one, we actually had, now this is, now remember, this one is what is this? 2018. So this is when the sellers and the buyers, the sellers and buyers loved each other, and everybody worked together, and we all held hands, and we all loved each other. So what that means is on this seller, they actually gave them money to resurface the pool, and we wrote that in there, and that was changed on there per their quote, and they all agreed to it, and the initial and everything was happening. It was beautiful closing, and actually everybody was really great on this. So, but that was 2018. Whereas, as far as things with sellers and buyers now, sellers know that if you start complaining about the pool surface, that they can get 5 more offers. So be real careful what you ask for, and don't make it a deal breaker. You love the house, don't make a $2,000 mistake. Like, in other words, you love the house, you can't wait to get it, and because they won't give you $2,000 allowance, you're going to just throw the whole thing away, even though you have invested the home inspection in it, you have invested your time in it, you love the house. If it's $2,000, you're going to spend that in rent probably in a month nowadays. So, so with this contract, if the seller was to back out, obviously they could get sued for financial damages, basically meaning like what you lost, like the home inspection, stuff like that. So if the seller decides I'm not gonna move. I have a lot of realtors ask me advice on that are new. The seller just changed their mind. Buyers already had a home inspection. I'm not an attorney, but I usually say, well, tell the seller to pay for the home inspection. The damages that they lost, offer it to the buyers if you're trying to get out of the contract. So, those are the things that are key in this. A lot of people say in Florida, or ask in Florida, is a real estate purchase that's not in writing, is it enforceable? So in other words, like the good old days when they'd say, we got a deal, and you'd shake on it, and I give you a couple $1,000s as a deposit. In Florida, it must be in writing to be enforceable. And I know that it's a fine line. If I just write it up on a napkin, you sign and I sign, and I give you a deposit, is it enforceable? Well, you need to see an attorney for that, but that would be a written contract. Now, this contract is a great contract. It's the most popular contract in Florida right now. Like I was saying, even if you get up to millions, you're still going to most likely be using this contract. If you're over $1 million or $1.5 million, you're going to use another contract, which is going to allow for termites, stuff like that. But it is still pretty even competitive with when you get into the really high-end prices right now. So I usually just say as is, then we just ask for allowances if we find damages, so we don't scare people away with the normal residential contract for Florida. We have one other form, which I kept talking about, which is called an escalation clause. And I just want to show you guys what it looks like, just so if you get to that point, you're not scared. I think I got a copy of it, so I'm just going to throw that up. So this one is an escalation clause. And again, that box would be checked on that last page I just showed you guys. And so you're going to, on that escalation clause, you're going to go to the part where it says you agree to increase up to blank. It's like in the middle of the page. That's the part where I was saying, on one property I literally put 1,000 up to blank, and then I wrote in myself, but please let us know if we need to go higher. That worked, but I don't know if that was legal, but I tried that, and then they all just ended up ripping up all the escalation clauses, and we did highest and best. So I don't know if my little escalation clause did it or what, but this form right here is basically saying that you're gonna increase your amount on top of your purchase. So in this one, it was $333,000. So if we say we will go up to $353,000 by $1,000 each person bidding against us. So what you do is you'd fill in 1,000 there, and then you put 353 on the next blank line, and then so they would have to show you a contract. So say we bid on this one 333 and someone bid 335, we would win the bid at 336. Of course, if someone bid 355, we would lose a bid because our escalation clause only goes up to 353, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But that's what everyone's talking about. So if you guys watch the news and they say people are using escalation clauses, escalation clause to go over the amounts and blah, blah, blah. What's an escalation clause? That's what escalation clause looks like. It's just a piece of paper, and it's just saying that here's our offer, and it's a solid offer, and here's all of our stuff. But you know what? Just in case we got outbid, we're going to go up to the blank amount by increments of 1,000 or 500. You can put whatever you want. You can put 250, you can put 300, you can put $1. But I usually put 1,000 so they know we're serious. And of course, if you're most consumers are skeptical, they're like, I'm going to end up paying $353 for this property. Well, no, because the agent, when they see this escalation clause, the agent has to ask for the contract that shows you beating it. So in other words, we want to see that contract for $350 that says, so we have to go up to $351 or whatever, the contract that beat you. We need to see that. Of course, they're going to cross through the names, because that's, they can't disclose a person's names, but they're going to have to send that contract over and show that they had a viable purchaser that you beat out. So don't be worried if you send an escalation clause that you're going to pay automatically that end amount, because it's basically putting that out there, but they're going to have to show proof. So it's not something that really people, ethically are going to, fake as far as fake contracts and stuff like that. They're going to have proof of funds, everything to back that for escalation clause. So I hope this made sense to you guys today. It was great seeing you. Have a great weekend, and everybody be safe. And I'll have more knowledge and updates for real estate soon. If you guys need any help, I'm here, buying, selling. I'm your girl. Give me a call.